Trades are one of the most exciting elements of the NHL, but for every successful deal or the odd blockbuster your favorite team has made, they've also certainly made some questionable or downright bad ones. With that in mind, today we're taking a look at some of the more recent ones, many of which affecting teams to this day, and going over the worst trade for all 32 NHL teams of the last 5 years, the Anaheim Ducks. We're starting off with one that's honestly not that bad. Congrats, Anaheim. On February 24th, 2020, the Ducks sent Daniel Sprong to the Washington Capitals in exchange for Christian Djoos. Playing 55 games and recording 21 points over 2 seasons with the Anaheim Ducks, Daniel Sprong spent a fair amount of time with their AHL affiliate, the San Diego Gulls, at one point clearing waivers. After landing in Washington, Sprong hung around for 2 seasons before bouncing around the league a bit and spending time with the Seattle Kraken and Detroit Red Wings, where he recorded 18 goals and 43 points last season. Far from a needle mover, Sprong is an alright bottom 6 winger who signed a 1-year deal with Vancouver this offseason. The return for Anaheim, Christian Djoos, only dressed in 9 games and recorded 3 points, now playing for EV Zug in Switzerland. The Boston Bruins. Here's a more recent one. On June 24th, just moments before puck drop for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers, the Boston Bruins sent Linus Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Joonas Korpisalo at 25% retained, fourth-line grinder Mark Kastelik, and a 2024 first-round draft pick. Don Sweeney didn't have a ton of leverage considering Ullmark's 15-team no-trade list, but rookie GM Steve Staios absolutely fleeced him. It's clear that Boston's crease belongs to Jeremy Swayman going forward. The only issue is they traded Ullmark before extending the restricted free agent. And without a deal as of the making of this video, it's a scary thought for Boston having to start Korpisalo, statistically one of the worst goaltenders in the league last season. The Senators essentially paid to dump Korpisalo's horrendous contract and got Ullmark for free. As to whether or not he will solve the goaltending problems that have plagued Ottawa since Craig Anderson remains to be seen, as does the possibility of a contract extension. The Buffalo Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres sat dead last in the NHL in April of 2021 and were selling off assets left, right, and center. 2 days before the trade deadline, they sent pending UFA Brandon Montour to the Florida Panthers for a third-round draft pick. Montour immediately addressed a need for Florida, sliding in for an injured Aaron Ekblad. Extending for 3 years in Florida, Montour was a major piece of the team that lifted the Stanley Cup last season, now joining the Seattle Kraken in free agency. The Calgary Flames. You all know which one is coming. It's covered in every worst trade video of the last few years, so we'll keep it brief. The Flames dealt Matthew Tkachuk and a 4th-round pick in 2025 to the Florida Panthers in a blockbuster for Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, Cole Schwindt, and a 1st-round pick in 2025. Long story short, this deal single-handedly triggered the Calgary Flames rebuild. Mackenzie Weegar has been excellent, but Jonathan Huberdeau's production fell off a cliff in consecutive seasons, and his contract looks like the worst in the entire league. Meanwhile, Matthew Tkachuk helped change the culture in Florida and brought the team its first Stanley Cup. The Carolina Hurricanes. Another team who doesn't have an egregiously bad trade over the last 5 years, the Carolina Hurricanes acquired Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan from the Vegas Golden Knights for future considerations on July 13th, 2022. Unfortunately, Pacioretty only played 5 games for the Canes before suffering a torn Achilles. Well, Carolina did basically get him for free and had no control over this situation. This definitely wasn't what they had in mind when they acquired the current Toronto Maple Leafs winger, the Chicago Blackhawks. On July 13th, 2021, the Chicago Blackhawks sent Adam Boqvist, a 2021 first and 2nd-round draft pick, and a 2022 fifth to the Columbus Blue Jackets for Seth Jones, a 2021 first and a 2022 6th-rounder. Attempting to remain competitive, the Blackhawks immediately invested in Jones, agreeing to an 8-year contract extension with an AAV of $9.5 million. The contract has aged terribly. While Jones is a decent defenseman, he's certainly not worth that price. It's a similar scenario to Darnell Nurse in Edmonton. As for the picks Chicago sent to Columbus, they turned into Cole Sillinger and David Jiricek. The Colorado Avalanche. Last season, the Avs looked to fill their need for a second-line center to play behind Nathan MacKinnon and sent Alex Galchenyuk to the Nashville Predators for Ryan Johansson at 50% retained. After a decent start in Denver, the wheels quickly fell off for Johansson, and he was dumped to the Philadelphia Flyers at the deadline, with Colorado finding their new 2C in Casey Middlestat. Ultimately, what was supposed to be a big splash addition to the Avalanche ended up being a complete dud. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Looking to make a run in the 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs with studs like Artemi Panarin and, at the time, Pierre-Luc Dubois on their roster, the Columbus Blue Jackets sent Anthony Duclair and 2 second-round picks to the rebuilding Ottawa Senators in exchange for Ryan Dzingel and a 7th-rounder. Dzingel had put up 44 points in 57 games with the Sens, but only recorded 12 in 21 with the Jackets, and only 1 point in 9 playoff games before departing for Carolina in free agency and falling off big time. The Dallas Stars. On December 19, 2022, the Dallas Stars acquired Nils Lundkvist from the New York Rangers for a 2023 first-round pick and a 2025 fourth-round pick. The Swedish defenseman and former 28th overall pick was pretty young and unproven at the time, but hasn't quite lived up to that steep of a price on the Stars' bottom defensive pairing, the Detroit Red Wings. Steve Yzerman made a pretty strange move this offseason when he attached a second-round pick to dump Jake Wallman to the San Jose Sharks. It's especially jarring considering some NHL GMs reportedly would have been willing to pay had Yzerman called. Aside from Moritz Seider, the Red Wings D-core doesn't look improved at all with Ben Sherratt now Seider's partner instead of Wallman. The Edmonton Oilers. Looking to add to their roster to help secure a playoff spot, the Edmonton Oilers sent Sam Gagner and second-round picks in 2020 and 2021 to the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for Andreas Athanasiou and prospect Ryan Kuffner. Athanasiou seemed like an ideal fit considering his highly productive tenure in Detroit, his familiarity with Oilers general manager Ken Holland, and his potential to keep up speed-wise with Connor McDavid. However, Athanasiou scored just 2 points in 9 regular season games with the Oilers and was shut out completely in 4 playoff contests with the team, not given a qualifying offer in the offseason. The Florida Panthers. Ahead of the 2022 trade deadline, the Florida Panthers acquired Ben Sherratt from the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for a 2023 first-round pick, prospect Ty Smilanic, and a 2022 fourth-rounder. Sherratt played in 20 regular season games and an additional 10 in the postseason, helping the Panthers win their first playoff series since 1996. But the President's Trophy winners were ultimately swept by their state rivals, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sherratt would then go on to sign in Detroit. So, in total, the Panthers gave up a young prospect, a fourth, and a first for 30 games of Ben Sherratt. Was it worth it? Definitely not. The Los Angeles Kings. When the Los Angeles Kings sent forward Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari, as well as a 2024 second-round draft pick to the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for Pierre-Luc Dubois, extended at $8.5 million for 8 years, they had high hopes for the center. 1 year later, and he's no longer on the team, dealt to the Washington Capitals for Darcy Kemper. Gabe Vilardi alone outproduced PLD last season, with him performing so badly that Kings GM Rob Blake had to put the equipment on to try and show Dubois what it means to compete. The Minnesota Wild. This is another one that isn't the worst in the video, so congrats Minnesota. On March 19, 2022, the Wild acquired winger Nicolas Deslauriers from the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for a 2023 third-round draft pick. Deslauriers was never going to contribute a ton of offense, recording 3 goals in 20 regular season games and going pointless and -3 in the Wild's 5-game defeat in the first round to the St. Louis Blues. Nevertheless, paying a third-rounder for 25 games of a grinder like Deslauriers only for him to depart for Philly in free agency wasn't the best move in hindsight. The Montreal Canadians. Having lost Philip Deneau to the Los Angeles Kings in free agency and Jesperi Kotkaniemi thanks to an offer sheet from the Carolina Hurricanes, the Montreal Canadiens made a reactionary trade on December 4th, 2021 by acquiring Christian Dvorak from the Arizona Coyotes for a 2022 first-round pick and a 2024 second-round pick. In 3 seasons in Montreal, Dvorak has never played more than 64 games and put up 33, 38, and 9 total points while dealing with injuries. Entering the last year of his current contract, which saw him earn $26.7 million over 6 years, Dvorak will have to perform much better if he hopes to remain in the NHL. The Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators handed Edmonton the top pair defensive defensemen they had been searching for on February 28, 2023, sending Matthias Ekholm and a 6th-round pick to the Oilers for Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, a 1st, and a 4th. Ekholm turned out to be a huge addition for Edmonton, anchoring their top pair and allowing Evan Bouchard to take a huge step. They were a big reason why the Oilers made the Cup final last year. Meanwhile, Barrie is already gone from Nashville and opted to sign a PTO with the Flames. There's potential for the first-rounder, Tanner Molendyk, to become something, but the overall return for Nashville seems underwhelming looking back. The New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils' goaltending was straight up bad last year, leading to them trading with Calgary for Jacob Markstrom this offseason. Hold on, slow down before you type that comment, we're not talking about that trade. Leading up to last year's deadline, it seemed like the Markstrom to New Jersey deal was going to happen a lot earlier, but then it didn't. In what seemed like a reactionary move, the Devils went ahead and acquired Jake Allen from the Montreal Canadiens for a 2025 third-round pick. Although 50% of Allen's salary was retained, he still isn't that great of a goalie at this stage in his career, recording an .895 save percentage in 34 games last season. Since the Devils were able to get Markstrom done in the end, Allen is now a backup. The New York Islanders. Entering the 2020 offseason, coming off a playoff run where they ended up in the Eastern Conference Final, the New York Islanders were pressed against the salary cap and needed to create space to sign RFA Matt Barzal. To do this, they sent Devon Toews to the Colorado Avalanche for second-round picks in 2021 and 2022. 4 years later, the trade looks like one of general manager Lou Lamoriello's most regrettable decisions. Toews formed one of the league's best D pairings alongside Cale Makar and won the Stanley Cup with the Avs in 2022. Rather than dealing Toews, the Islanders could have instead dealt Nick Leddy a year earlier and at least gotten a better return for Toews down the line as Noah Dobson continued his rise. The New York Rangers. Looking to make space for top picks like Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere, and deciding to keep Chris Kreider long-term, the New York Rangers sent RFA Pavel Buchnevich to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for Sam Blaise and a 2022 second-round pick. Buchnevich inked a 4-year extension and blew his former scoring numbers out of the water, tallying 76 points with the Blues, and has become an excellent top-line winger, recently extending for another 6 years at $8 million. The Ottawa Senators. Yes, time to talk about the goalie carousel in Ottawa. Joonas Korpisalo, Cam Talbot, and many others, but none worse than Matt Murray. The former 2-time Stanley Cup winning goaltender was acquired from the Pittsburgh Penguins in October 2020 for a second-round pick and prospect Jonathan Gruden. Murray was abysmal in Ottawa. In 45 NHL starts, he boasted an .899 save percentage and was at one point sent down to the AHL. On top of that, 2 years later, the Ottawa Senators had to pay to dump him to the Toronto Maple Leafs, attaching a 3rd and 7th round pick while retaining 25% of his salary, getting future considerations in return. For the sake of all Sens fans' sanity, I hope Linus Ullmark works out there. The Philadelphia Flyers. In July 2021, the Flyers sent defenseman Robert Hägg, a 2021 first-round pick, and a 2023 second-round pick to the Buffalo Sabres to acquire Rasmus Ristolainen. A physical defenseman coming off of a down year, Philly was banking on Ristolainen transitioning into an elite defenseman, evident when they extended him for 5 years. He simply hasn't lived up to the price tag of a first-rounder plus in the city of brotherly love, missing most of last season. The Pittsburgh Penguins. Moments ahead of the roster freeze for the Seattle Kraken expansion draft, Penguins GM Ron Hextall sent Jared McCann to the Toronto Maple Leafs for prospect Philip Hollander and a 7th-round pick. 4 days later, and the Kraken would happily take him as their pick for Toronto. Fast forward, and now McCann is Seattle's biggest offensive star, has helped the Kraken make the playoffs in just their 2nd year, and the Penguins have absolutely nothing to show for it, with Hollander back in Europe. The San Jose Sharks. This summer, San Jose made a massive move when trading for Yaroslav Askarov, but they could have held on to another stud goaltender a few years ago. Back in August 2022, the Sharks sent Adin Hill to the Vegas Golden Knights for a 4th-round pick. Less than a year later, Hill would be lifting the Stanley Cup. It's important to remember he was a 3rd-string, improbable playoff hero who got hot at the right time, but still, Hill for a 3rd looks insane in retrospect. The Seattle Kraken. It's tough to pick one for a franchise entering only its 4th season. In fact, I count 16 trades since the expansion draft. I guess sending Mason Appleton to the Winnipeg Jets, where they got him in the expansion draft, for a 4th-round pick isn't great, but I'm willing to give the Kraken a pass in this video. The St. Louis Blues. Before the 2023 trade deadline, the St. Louis Blues sold off 3 pretty big forwards. Well, Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko fetched a decent return. Ivan Barbashev did not. Sent to the Vegas Golden Knights for prospect forward Zach Dean, who struggled to find his footing above the junior level. Meanwhile, Barbashev was a huge X-factor for Vegas en route to their Stanley Cup win. The Tampa Bay Lightning. This is just wild to look back on. In February 2023, the Bolts acquired Tanner Jeannot from the Nashville Predators for Cal Foote and, wait for it, a 2025 first, 2024 second, 2023 third, 2023 fourth, and 2023 fifth. That's almost an entire draft worth of picks. All that for Tanner Jeannot, who simply was not a fit in Tampa's bottom 6. We'll see if he can rebound with the Los Angeles Kings this season, but he certainly wasn't worth giving up an entire draft class for. The Toronto Maple Leafs. In February of 2020, the Toronto Maple Leafs sent Mason Marchment to the Florida Panthers in exchange for Dennis Mulligan. At the time, the 24-year-old Marchment had appeared in just 4 NHL games, recording 1 assist. However, 2 seasons later, he would break out for 47 points. Now a member of a very exciting Dallas Stars team, he set a career-high 53 points last season. In case you were wondering where Mulligan is now, it's the Swiss League. The Utah Hockey Club. We're going to have to go with the Coyotes trade for this one, even though it's kinda up in the air if their history is technically coming with them to Salt Lake City. Rarely do you see former NHL MVPs traded while they're still in their 20s, but in 2019, the Coyotes acquired 2018 Hart Trophy winner Taylor Hall in exchange for Nick Merkley, Nate Schnarr, Kevin Ball, a 2020 first-round pick, and a 2021 third-rounder. At the time, it felt like the Coyotes robbed the Devils, but that first-rounder turned into Dawson Mercer, an absolute stud of a young center that I'm sure Utah would love to have right now. The Vancouver Canucks. If you're not Utah/Arizona fans, here's your redemption. In July 2021, the Vancouver Canucks acquired Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland from the Coyotes in exchange for Louis Eriksson, Antoine Roussel, Jay Beagle, the 9th pick of the 2021 NHL Draft, a 2022 second-round pick, and a 7th-rounder in 2023. Well, Connor Garland has become a really solid winger in Vancouver, OEL would be bought out just 2 years later. And oh yeah, that 2021 9th overall pick became Dylan Guenther, who looks like an absolute stud and core player moving forward for the Utah Hockey Club. The Vegas Golden Knights. In a move that surprised everyone at the 2024 NHL Draft, goaltender Logan Thompson was traded to the Washington Capitals by the Vegas Golden Knights for just 2 third-round picks. Thompson was looking for more ice time and an increased role, which Washington could offer. However, it still feels like Vegas could have fetched a nicer return. But we'll have to see how this one plays out for Thompson this season with his new team, the Washington Capitals. Speaking of Vegas and Washington, the Golden Knights were able to snag Chandler Stevenson from the Capitals back in 2021. The return, a 2021 fifth-round pick. Stevenson went on to absolutely break out in Vegas, a major part of their Stanley Cup winning team. There's always the chance that may not have happened in DC, but a fifth-rounder for a future elite defensive-minded center is a steal. The Winnipeg Jets. Anytime you have to buy a player out that you traded for, it's a safe one to make this list. In July 2021, the Winnipeg Jets acquired Nate Schmidt from the Vancouver Canucks for a third-round draft pick. Funnily enough, Schmidt had blocked previous trade attempts to Winnipeg with his trade protection, if only the Jets had left it at that. After a 2023-24 season in which Schmidt tallied 2 goals and 14 points in 63 games, the Jets bought out the final year of his $5.95 million contract. He simply wasn't playing up to his salary while blocking younger, cheaper guys from developing. But what do you think? What's your least favorite trade your team has made in the last 5 years? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to click like if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for more NHL content. We'll see you in the next video.